Dr. Mestenhauser, I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about the challenges and obstacles to international education.
I think I've been pretty much talking about it.
It's been hours talking.
Most of this throughout the presentations out here too, is these mindsets. It's the dysfunction of the organization of the university, and the fact that international education is a different kind of an animal for educators, to deal with. Lack of training of faculty, for example. We focus entirely on undergraduate education for a year, presumably to teach them, and assume that we reach all of them. I think I'll come back to that a little later on. We obviously don't. But the liberal and general education format, which has been with us for 170 years and was very functional, very helpful, and so on, is no longer so. And that's simply because it does not allow any entrance of any new knowledge. It sustains the existing knowledge, maybe with sprinkles occasionally here and there of addition of what people call the flavor of the month kind of thing.
Right.
But its faculty don't know how to deal with interdisciplinary concepts, and they don't particularly want to associate themselves with them because they don't give you the ratings, the brownie points for promotion and tenure.
Sure.
So you need to really change the whole thing, including the promotion and tenure and so forth. And the thing is that, for example, we have a great positive responses from many people, like in the arts, for example, humanities and so on, because they seem to understand that very, very easily, I think, and in our own institution, I think we already have something like 42 courses that have been internationalized as a result of the Bush Foundation grant and other events organized on a volunteer basis. So there is a hope, that faculty will do. But even some of these faculty have difficulties understanding the concepts of culture, the emic and ethic one. Right. And then, of course, you have fields that are the most difficult to internationalize. And I think I already mentioned American studies, American history, American political science, but also policy sciences. And, to some extent, the scientific fields are also difficult to internationalize. They do need to be internationalized in a different way because, obviously, mathematics is mathematics, physics is physics and so on. But I think it's the role of the professional people in physics that may be different. And so there is a different dimension for sciences that there is for the normal social sciences out here. Right. The interesting aspect that I would like to mention to you is the story that was told in a whole book at one point, which was called the Cross-Cultural Perspectives on Social Psychology. And the one way that some of the social psychologists who were cross-culturally oriented solved the distinction and the division and the conflict they had with the mainstream people is to create their own organization and their own journal, which the mainstream people resented. So that there was a real conflict then.
Yeah.
And the conflict permeated into the individual departments as well.
Yeah.
So what they decided to do is to get a foundation grant to resolve this conflict. And they invited 50 people from each of the stream to a kind of a resort, kind of like a conference center away from the hustle and bustle of big towns, and to resolve it. And they read papers to each other.
Yeah.
And the outcome of that was unbelievable, and it was actually described in this book out here. The mainstreamers came to say that they really appreciate the contribution that the cross-cultural people have made. You know, that they still don't agree with them.
Yeah.
You know, that there is no point of studying primitive societies, which they do. And what's wrong with studying our own culture? And if they receive all these grants, why don't they share them with us? So that was the outcome of the solution, and it did not reach any conclusions, of course. So the cross-cultural psychology group still has its own structure and their own cross-cultural journal. I don't know if you are familiar with that. It's high quality, but it's all quantitatively oriented out here too.
Yeah, that sort of gets into this other idea too. How else have these obstacles or challenges been met with? Are there any other ways that they've been?
Well, you know, as I indicated, you have to really reach out to each individual people, you know, which is very demanding on you. But the other way to do that is to call meetings, to hold seminars, webinars, and conferences at which you invite people to read papers and so forth. And these have been very useful because this has enriched the literature immensely. You know, but at the same time, as the saying goes, you can lead the horse to the water, but you cannot make them drink it, you know.
Right.
And I think that's one of the things, because all the big conferences, like the Mestenhauser lectures, for example, you can look at the audience, it's always packed.
Yeah.
But all the ones are the people like you are reaching to the converts already, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And the ones who should be there, like the social psychologists, the economists, and so on, you know, they just kind of ignore that. This is not for them, as such, too. So that's one of the gaps, and I don't know what the solution is, short of the president and the regions and so on commanding that some activity be shown from year to year or something of that sort.
Yeah.
And in a public land-grant institution, the university is very hesitant to do that because of fear of what the legislature would do. I don't agree with that. I think the legislature is much more educated than some of the deans and the faculty, and I got a glimpse of that when we pushed some time ago for a bill to give scholarships to foreign students. You know, that was a pretty tough sell, and we had some opposition there too, including from organized labor, until the people from our department that studies organized labor helped us to intervene and say, drop off the opposition. So I learned a lot about lobbying and things like that. The bill was passed, and it still is in effect. And but you know, I think that the legislature understood somehow that the state also has responsibility for international education. You know, that was one of the major issues for many of the legislators, is that they are responsible just to their own constituents. You know, but the sponsors of the bill clearly persuaded people, you know, that the state does have the responsibility, because we invite these international students, scholars, and so on, our faculty, to go abroad, because it's all based on reciprocity. So everything international is to our advantage.
Right. Yes. All right. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Mestenhauser.